Hey, really quick there, she said maybe someone will buy the new building. Just so y'all know, or buy the old building. Just so you know, we're not selling this one yet. But we do actually have a contract to sell the old building now. So praise God for that. Pretty cool. That's good news. I agreed to sell it for $37. Just kidding. No, it'll be a few months before it, because real estate contracts, you never know what'll happen. So we'll see. But you can be praying on that it works out really well. So now let's get to week number 3 of our finance series. This is the final week. Next week we're going back to the book of Mark, picking up where we left off. But I want you to imagine for a moment that you found a map to a treasure chest. And so you were searching all around, you followed it for days, hours, weeks, months, and you finally came across the treasure chest. I want you to wonder and then tell someone what you would do with the millions inside. So to actually think about what would you do with the millions of dollars that you found. Don't say, I'd give it all away, because no, you wouldn't, okay? Just think a minute, tell someone near you, in front of you, behind you, next to you, what would you do if suddenly you had found millions of dollars in treasure? What's one thing you would buy? Hi, what's one thing you would buy if you had $1 million? Do you know? A horse. That makes a lot of sense because the cowboy hat. 1 million horses. Okay, that's a lot of horses. All right, throw it out there. What are some other things you guys would buy? What are some of a car? Yeah. A house? A what? You pay for everything you already have? Yeah, exactly, right? I heard someone say boat, I think. I would go for a boat, but not just any boat. I would want a Sea Ray SDX 90. Oh, yeah. This bad boy has an 81-gallon fuel tank, which means it costs about $400 to fill up on the lake. But it could hold all my family and my friends. We could go water skiing, tubing in luxury, man. Of course, the boat itself costs quite a bit more than my yearly salary, which is why I'd have to find millions of dollars before I bought it. But we found a map. We're at the treasure chest. Let's see what's inside the treasure chest, because it's gonna, All right, so I owe you millions. Lost my pirate boat after the lease was over. Oh, well, that's disappointing, isn't it? Wouldn't that be awkward if you found a treasure chest from a pirate and it was like, sorry, I lost my boat. I had to give up my treasure because I leased it instead of bought it. Like that seems absurd, but how many people is this their actual life? Like if they lease their car, their boat, they're going to lose it in a little bit. And people talk about having money. They talk about having treasure chests, but they actually have nothing in the treasure chest. Everything they own is leased or borrowed or loaned. Maybe this empty treasure chest represents your life sometimes. You've got plans, you've got hopes, you've got a few things that you've bought, but you can't seem to fill the chest with actual cash, because you don't have a lot of cash. And some of you are only a few paychecks away from losing a car or a home. If you were to lose your job right now, you'd be in big trouble in 3 or 4 months. Session 1, we talked about we got to stop wanting stuff, because the more items we own and the more we shop, the more our dopamine levels go up and the more it makes us unhappy. Session 2 was about giving to the Lord 10% of our income. Full send it, because that's what God wants for us. Today we're going to talk about why your treasure chest is empty. Why don't you have more money than you do right now? And we're going to see exactly what the Bible says about it. We're also going to examine some secular researchers and what they say about why we don't have money. And every week in this series, we've found places where this is what the Bible has taught for thousands of years. And then finally, secular scientists have caught up to it. And let me just tell you what I know about you, okay? Or at least what I think I know about you. Here's what I think I know about you. You feel like you work too hard and too long for too little. You see all kinds of people with cars and vacations and nicer homes, and you're wondering sometimes, what am I doing wrong? You want more. You don't want like Taylor Swift private jet more, but you would like to be able to go out to eat with your friends and family and not worry about the bill at the end of the night. You'd love to be able to buy Christmas presents for your family members without feeling like it puts a burden on you. And I think you'd love to give God what God is due and still have more left over in the treasure chest. That's what I think I know about you. Would you just give me a nod if that's true for you? Right? That's true for almost all of us, because we do want some cash. We know we need some reserves, but we want to be able to live in a way that's comfortable too. Listen, there's a reason why your treasure chest is not full. And it's not what you see on social media, okay? It's not because rich people are abusing you. It's not that the system is set up for me to fail. No, there's reasons that you have behaviors and beliefs. In fact, let's go ahead and write this down, okay? There are behaviors and beliefs about money that live under the surface of my conscious thought that have put me where I am today financially. You have beliefs about money and you have behaviors with money. The reason you have to say both of those is because sometimes you have the right belief, but your behavior doesn't line up with it. Y'all know that's true, don't you? So you have both behaviors and beliefs about money that are under the surface. And today we're going to work on discovering what those are. Each week in this series, I've told the story about luck. I'm going to tell it again today because if there's anyone new here, I want you to understand this really clearly. There are people who consider themselves lucky and people who consider themselves unlucky. And so they did some research on these people, and they invited the unlucky people and the lucky people to a coffee bar. The unlucky people walked in, they found a $5 bill on the ground that had been placed there. They put it in their pocket, went inside, read a book for an hour, and then left. The people who consider themselves lucky walked in, found a $5 bill, was like, wow, can you believe I found $5 on the ground? And they went in, they sat down, and they started talking to random strangers. How you doing? What are you reading? I'm reading this. And they started striking up conversations. That was the difference between lucky and unlucky people. I decided to test it, so I went to our local gas station, walked around for 30 minutes, just talked to weirdos. They thought I was a weirdo. Had some good conversations, and then all of a sudden I met this guy, and he was like, what, I work right next to you, and we had this conversation, and I got a business deal in a gas station. Like, how lucky is that? The whole deal is that there are things happening under the surface. Plants need light, and plants need water to live, right? And this happens underneath the surface in a lot of ways. If the plant gets what it needs, it's going to thrive. Do you agree with that? If a plant doesn't, it's going to die. Do you agree with that? What happens is under the surface, the nutrients that hit it coming here, something happens inside or below that causes life or death. And here's the thing that happens inside or underneath doesn't look anything like a green leaf. It looks like sunlight, nutrients, soil, water, but it produces something great. There are things in your life that are under the surface. These beliefs you have about the way you live, behaviors you have about money living under the surface that are causing you to be wealthy or causing you to have nothing in your treasure chest. You've got to listen to this today, because even if it's not your fault, even if you're where you're at today because the system's been completely unfair to you, the reality is there are truths that you need to know about money or you're going to be broke forever. And if you get what we're talking here today and you understand it and put it into practice, you will have more money. Now, why are we talking about money like this in a church? Because the Bible talks about it. And if God says it in his word, I want you to understand it. God is not against you having some money. He's against you being greedy. There's a difference, right? So we want to understand the biblical principles about how to have more money. Now, you can ignore this today, that's fine, but the rest of your life, you're going to feel like you don't have enough. And I want you to have and feel like you have enough. Now, we're going to look at 3 Bible verses today. Will you all say the number 3? Say 3. Right, we're going to look at 3 Bible verses. The first one we're going to spend probably 80% of the time on because it's the most important, and the other 2 support that one. But this first Bible verse is the most important. Let me read it to you. It is Proverbs 13:7. One person pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Okay, so they're pretending to be rich, but the reality is they have nothing. Another pretends to be poor, so that's what they're pretending to be, yet they have great wealth. This is a fascinating verse. We're going to read this out loud together. I want to get everyone to say this because when you say it, it changes how you learn it. Let's read this. One person pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. Now, what does it mean to pretend to be rich or pretend to be poor? So there's 2 words here for pretend. This part of the Bible was written in Hebrew, and in Hebrew, these 2 words are actually 2 different words. So let's talk about the person who pretends to be rich but is actually poor. So the person who's actually poor, it says they pretend to be rich. What does the Hebrew word for pretend mean? Well, it actually means, if you look at the word study dictionary, it actually means to become wealthy in money and possessions. That seems like a rich person. Why would you say that's the poor person? In other words, this person, if you translate this literally, it says he has nothing because the whole is empty. In other words, he's got a whole bunch of stuff, but it's actually emptiness in the long run. In other words, the poor person might have a bunch of stuff, but his treasure chest has no more money in it. Remember your American home? You have 300,000 items at your house. That's what the average person has, right? But you barely any savings. That's exactly what this is talking about. Listen. Lots of possessions, no monies. That's a poor person according to the Bible. Lots of possessions, no monies. You're pretending to be rich because though you have very little cash, you have lots of things and you continue to buy them. The rich guy, however, he pretends to be poor. And in Hebrew, the word pretend isn't even in there. It's translated pretend because that's the idea, but in Hebrew it literally says this guy is poor yet rich. In other words, he's rich, but you wouldn't know it because he doesn't look like it. He actually has a very full treasure chest, but there's no way for you to know that he has a full treasure chest. Listen, this is the main idea here. The poor guy, lots of possessions, no monies. The rich guy, very few possessions, lots of monies. Are you on track with me right now? Let's go ahead and write this down. This is the main idea we need to get. One guy collects possessions and has lots of stuff, but he has very little in the treasure chest. The other guy looks like he has very little, but his treasure chest is full. The rich look poor and the poor look rich. In other words, I'm going to sum the sermon up for you. You ignore everything else I say, pay attention to the next 10 seconds, because I'm not even going to use a word, and this should help you understand the entire sermon. You get it? See, this guy is actually poor. He's the dude that walks around and buys the suits and buys the stuff. He acts like he's rich, but he's actually poor. This dude, he doesn't look rich at all, but he is the one who has money in the treasure chest. And of course, it's not just about the suits, because some of you are like, well, I don't even own a suit. I guess I'm doing okay. No, this is a metaphor. You understand? This is a metaphor for our life and our spending. When you think about what it means to have wealth, the first thing you got to get out of your head is what you think a wealthy person looks like. This is the most basic and important thing to understand. When the Bible talks about wealth and when rich people talk about wealth, they're not talking about acquiring possessions like people think they do. Let's write this down. It's out the bottom of this blank. I have to get it out of my head that being wealthy means having nice stuff. You got to get it out of your head that being wealthy means having nice stuff, because it doesn't. The Bible says truly rich people don't even have that much stuff. And do you know the research actually shows exactly what the Bible says? This is a book called The Millionaire Next Door. So I studied it, and the book, The Next Millionaire Next Door, written by two guys who started researching millionaires. They wanted to do studies and figure out what makes a millionaire a millionaire. And so they started by going to the neighborhoods with big houses and lots of nice cars. And they discovered, wait a minute, these neighborhoods with big houses and nice cars, everybody here is broke. There's no millionaires here. They're like, what do we do? So they started to try to find real millionaires, people who have full treasure chests. And I want to read some of this book to you because it's a mind-blowing book. It backs up exactly what the Bible is teaching. Most Americans have no idea about the true inner workings of a wealthy household. The advertising industry in Hollywood have done a wonderful job conditioning us to believe that wealth and hyperconsumption go hand in hand. What's hyperconsumption? Consuming is like buying and using things. Hyper is like a lot. So buying a lot of stuff. It's saying our culture makes us believe that wealthy people buy a lot. Yet, the large majority of rich live well below their means. What does that mean? It means if they make $100,000, They don't live on $100,000. They live on $40,000. Unfortunately, most Americans think they're emulating the rich by immediately consuming any upward swing in their cash flow. What's that mean? That means if you're making $35,000, you're living on 35. And then when you get a raise to 40, you immediately live on 40. But millionaire next door types do it differently. As one millionaire woman trained as an engineer told me, after college, my husband and I both got good jobs. We lived on one income and saved the other. Anytime we got raises, we just saved more. We lived in the same modest home for 20 years. Sometimes my kids ask for report because I make them order from the value meal, the value menu. So what's going on here? This lady who's rich and the people who did the study on millionaires, they say, hey, it is not what you think it is to be a millionaire. These people are actually not. Let's go to the rich guy here. He's saying that you and I have been trained to believe that rich people have nice watches and gold chains, but that is not how millionaires live. Are you following this right now? That is not how millionaires live. The question is, that was painful. How do millionaires live? Well, he probably has health insurance, so it's going to be okay. But gold watches and nice chains, that is not how they live. How do they live? Well, let me read to you just a little bit more from that millionaire book. This time we're going to put it on the screen so you can follow along. 20 years ago, we began studying how people became wealthy. Initially, we did it, as you might imagine, by surveying people in so-called upscale neighborhoods across the country. In time, we discovered something odd. Many people who live in expensive homes and drive luxury cars do not actually have much wealth. Then we discovered something even odder. Many people who have a great deal of wealth do not even live in upscale neighborhoods. That small insight changed our lives. Most people have it all wrong about wealth in America. Wealth is not the same as income. If you make a good income each year and spend it all, you're not getting wealthier, you're just living high. Do you hear that? It don't matter if you make $800,000 a year. If you're spending $800,000 a year, you're poor. You might be able to have a lot of stuff. You might have more than $300,000 items in your home, but you don't have any cash left. Wealth is what you accumulate, not what you spend. How do you become wealthy? Here's the answer. Here too, most people have it wrong. It is seldom luck, or inheritance, or advanced degrees, or even intelligence that enables people to amass fortunes. Actually, did you know the studies show that people with high IQs make less money than people with low IQs? No, that's true. It's kind of crazy. That's why you don't have any money. I'm just joking. I don't know. I did that to someone in first service too, and they're like, thanks. Wait, huh? No. Intelligence, luck, inheritance don't have anything to do with wealth. What is it? Wealth is more often the result of a lifestyle of hard work, perseverance, planning, and most of all, self-discipline. Oh, you didn't want to hear that, did you? This sermon sucks. All right, let's write this down. The book, The Millionaire Next Door, says the same thing as the Bible. Wealth is the result of a lifestyle of 1, hard work. Number 2, perseverance, like keep going. Number 3, planning, like making a budget and following it. And then most of all, number 4, self-discipline. You've got to be disciplined. You see, you've been taught that all those rich people are making life hard for you. And that's why you can't afford bigger things. In reality, most of the people buying bigger things, they can't afford the bigger things either. They're buying it on credit. They're borrowing everything they have. And most millionaires, you know who the millionaires are according to the studies? People like welders, contractors. Did you know that school teachers are in the top 5 careers that make the most millionaires? Can we all agree in here that school teachers don't get rich by their salary alone? Can we agree with that? So how could it be that teachers are in the top 5 for most millionaires? Because they save their money. It's not how much you make, it's what you do with what you make. I'm gonna say that again because it needs to kick your butt a little bit. It's not how much you make, it's what you do with what you make. Stop pretending to be rich. The reason you've got no money is because you're pretending to be rich. What was that Bible verse again? Proverbs 13:7. One person pretends to be rich yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor and has great wealth. I'm sorry I yelled at you right there, but your dad should have yelled at you about this a long time ago. Pretending to be rich and buying stuff is why you don't have cash. All right? Let's just ask the question then, how do you pretend to be rich? What does it even mean? What does it mean to pretend? The number one way people pretend to be rich, car debt. This is the number one way people pretend to be rich. Most vehicle debt is pretending to be rich. Why is it pretending? Because if you have a loan or a lease, it's because you didn't actually have the money and you're pretending to have more than you really do. You are pretending to be rich. And that's why you don't have cash in the treasure chest. Is this making sense? I know, it hurt. I had a few people come up to me after first service and like, you're mean. Like, that hurt. But look, buying a nicer car quicker than you can afford actually leads to an empty treasure chest. Because now, instead of putting $300, $400, $700 a month in your own treasure chest, you're putting $300, $400, $700 a month in Toyota's treasure chest. So I don't have any debt on vehicles. My wife and I used to lease a vehicle like 20 some years ago, and we had credit card debt, and we had student loan debt, and we had car debt, and we were just like every other American. We don't have any of that now. Zero debt, nothing. I don't have debt on vehicles. The last vehicle I purchased cost $2,000. And we got a different vehicle. I gave the $2,000 one to my son. It's a great vehicle. It runs. The only thing wrong with it is that I drove it into a police car. I'm sorry, CJ, sorry. But it's true. Look, I don't need to take a $10,000 loan because I spent a little amount of money on a car that I could afford. The problem is you got too many people living like they're richer than they really are. And so you see everybody driving around with these nice cars, but they got nothing in the treasure chest, nothing saved for retirement, nothing in an emergency fund. They lose their job, and 3 months later, they got no car, no boat, no house, no nothing, because they're leasing all of it. I like to tell my kids when we drive by someone with a nice car, I'm like, look at that. Like, woo, that's a nice car. They're like, heck yeah, it is. And I'm like, they are in debt. I tell my kids regularly because I want them to have a picture of reality, and that's reality. Most people who have a nice car are in debt. I'll tell you what millionaires drive a little bit later. But I do recognize that in Salina, Kansas, most people need a vehicle. So if you have to have a vehicle loan and you can't afford to buy one outright, here are my suggestions on buying a vehicle loan. I'm just going to write them right here. Do I have a blank page here? I think I have a blank page. Okay. So my first rule in getting a vehicle loan is that you should be spending $5,000 or less on a vehicle. Okay, $5,000 or less on a vehicle. Preferably, if you can do it, get a vehicle for $2,500 or less. And you're like, Jeff, those aren't gonna be nice cars. You can't afford a nice car. That's why you're taking a loan. Not if you're getting it. Are you starting to get it, right? The reason you're taking a loan is because you can't afford a nice car. So don't buy a nice car. If you do have to get a loan, then it needs to be low interest. And I'm talking maybe around 8%, something like that. Don't go to one of these shark places that is going to put 20, 30% interest rate on your car. You will never pay it off. Don't do it. Walk before you pay 30% interest on a loan for a car, okay? It's not worth it. The next thing is your car has to be, I'm sorry to say this, but if you're going to take a loan, your car should be a little bit embarrassing to drive. Why should it be embarrassing? Because you aren't wealthy enough to own something else. Here's the reality. You got to live in reality. We got to start living in reality. And the reality is, I don't have $30,000 for a super nice car, and so I should not own a $30,000 nice car. The car you own, if you got to take a loan, should be a little embarrassing because embarrassing cars inspire you to save more money so you don't have to drive it longer than you need to. Are you on track with me right now? The goal is to get the heck out of it. And that's why the next rule is like a 36-month loan. Don't get one of these 5 or 6 year loans for a car. Definitely not one of these 10-year loans. You want to be out of this sucker in 3 years or less. If you're gonna go into debt, don't do it for very long. And the last thing is, before you go into debt, you gotta make a plan to save. Why? Because if you buy a $2,500 car, you're gonna have to make repairs, right? So you gotta save up some money for repairs, and you gotta save up some money for a different car. If you cannot buy a car on loan and save money at the same time, don't buy the car, because you're gonna force yourself to go broke. You gotta figure some way else around it. But Jeff, then I'm just not gonna have a car. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. Poor people pretend to be rich. If you cannot afford it, do not pretend like you can afford it. Is this starting to make sense here, right? The point is that debt should be a very temporary situation. Do not pretend to be rich with your car. Remember, the pirate lost his boat because he leased it, and that leads to no treasure. Okay, the next thing that we do, the next greatest way to pretend you're rich is credit cards. Credit cards kill us, man. Just like a car, people pretend to be rich by swiping their card. Why do people use a credit card? The people use a credit card to buy things that they don't have cash for. See if you can figure out where this is gonna go, okay? If you see something you want and you say, gosh, I don't have enough cash to buy this right now, your next sentence should be, yeah, I'm not gonna buy it right now. That's right. You scared me there for a second. I was like, I'm not getting through to them. Okay, right? If you can't afford it, don't swipe the card. Say to yourself, I can't buy this. Using a credit card means you're pretending to have something you don't have. And the third way that people pretend to be rich is oversized spending and immature saving. Okay, you're not saving enough and your spending is oversized. I'll give you an example of oversized spending. You ever heard the term house poor? House poor means that you spend so much on your rent or mortgage for your house that you don't have enough money left and you feel poor. Because now you can't afford to go out to eat, or you can't afford to pay your whatever else because you spent so much on your home. All right, this is not a situation you want to be in. According to Dave Ramsey and other studies, how much should you spend on your mortgage or rent? By the way, I don't know if there's any bankers in here, but I hope this offends you, bankers. Banks will lie to you and tell you, you can afford this much. Remember, they're selling you a mortgage. They're making money off it. The more they can loan to you, the more money they make. Don't ask the bank how much mortgage you can take. Dave Ramsey, other professionals will say you should spend no more than 20% of your take-home pay, not of your gross, but of your 20% of your take-home pay on your home. That means if you make $120,000 a year or $10,000 a month, you should only spend $2,000 on rent. If you only bring home $35,000 a year, then your mortgage should be $600 or less a month. What happens is that people get homes that are oversized and they can't afford anything else. Well, my home isn't oversized. I have 3 kids and a friend. The size of your house isn't determined by the size of your family, but the size of your budget. That's important. It don't matter if you got 10 kids, 12 crazy uncles, 42 cats, and a German Shepherd. If you've got that many living things in your home, you should be spending less on your home because now your grocery bill needs to be more. Does this make sense? Right? The size of your house is not determined by the size of your family, but by the size of your budget. 20% or less of your take-home pay for rent or mortgage. So, let's say you do buy a house. What are rules that you should follow? I don't have time to go over the 332 rules that I should give, but one of them is this. Don't buy a house with someone you're not married to. Say that again. Don't buy a house with someone you're not married to. Whatever you say. All right. If you are not married, you don't have the legal protections, you don't have the financial protections, and you don't have the emotional and spiritual protection from the Lord that you need to make that sort of investment. Don't do it. Second, if you're gonna buy a house, you need a 15-year mortgage, not a 30. The bank will sell you on a 30 or 40-year mortgage or an ARM because they make more money. Don't do it. 15-year or better. My home, what I did is even a little different than what I've suggested to you all. I didn't do 20% or less. My house is 15% of our take-home pay. We put down 20%, which you need to put down 20%, and we're doing a 15-year mortgage on our home. You need to do this. And you might be saying to yourself, well, nobody can save 20% down payment nowadays. Of course not. Because you're living in an oversized house, outsized car with Disney Plus, and yes, let's say it, you go out to eat too much. I know. I've seen the memes. Everyone says, the boomers say that we could afford a house if we stopped buying lattes. Nah. Okay, listen. Whatever the boomer, I've seen the memes, right? This is a meme. This guy, his name's Eric Hoke, Erichoke. Follow him for bad financial advice, all right? He says, remember, friend, a $5 iced latte a day is $25 a week, $100 a month, and $1,200 a year. After 10 years, that's $12,000, which is still nowhere near enough to put a down payment on a house, so enjoy your espresso in peace. What did this guy just do? This guy just made fun of $12,000. That's stupid. To make fun of saving $12,000. But you know what the whole deal is? When people make fun of the don't buy a latte thing or don't get guacamole thing, they're missing the point. The point isn't just the latte. The point is the lifestyle, right? So let's just look at something that pretty much everybody does. You buy the latte every day for $5, which someone came to me after last service and told me it's not $5 anymore for a good one. It's more like $7 or something like that. Whatever, we'll say $5. $15 for Netflix, $11 for Disney Plus, $100 more than you should on the phone plan, $500 car payment. Let's say your rent is just $200 higher than it should be. And your out to eat budget is $200 higher than it should be. You should be eating more bologna at home. What does this add up to? This adds up to, let me change this back to black. All right, this adds up to 1,000. It keeps changing colors on me. This adds up to $1,181 every month. That's a lot, isn't it? What is that up to yearly? Yearly, that adds up to $14,172. You know what this adds up to after 5 years? $70,860 after 5 years. In 7 years, it's $100,000. Nobody in this room should say that you can't save $100 because you could in 7 years. And I'm not listed anything like diamond bracelets or Disney vacations. You could have $100,000 if you stopped pretending. What's Proverbs 13:7 say again? It says, one person, come on. Nope. It doesn't want to do it. It wants to be poor for the rest of its life. I'm going to restart you, punk. All right. Right? This computer thinks, all right, let's see here. Where were we? We were here. I was about to do this. Yes. Okay, wait. I got another way. This screen is going to learn how to spend its money the right way, one way or another. Here we go. All right. Proverbs 13:7. Let's say it together. One person pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth. The average person pretends to be rich by buying things they can't afford. The average person has a car payment. The average person pays a little more than they should for their home. Yeah, and the average person is broke and stressed. What is below the surface that causes your life to be the way it is? The belief that you should have things like everybody else who is stressed and broke and freaking out. What is under the surface? Your inability to have self-control. Even now, some people are thinking, gosh, Jeff, what do you want? You want me living in an unsafe shanty? I remember my first house in Salina. It was a little apartment. You had to walk up this dangerous alley inside this house, up into this room. It was with my wife, and it was about 300 square feet. And the kitchen, this is how you walked across the kitchen. Okay? This was one part, and then this was the other part. Like, I'm not even joking. And the refrigerator, because the kitchen was so small, was in the family room, if you could call it a family room. There's room for a couch and a TV, but the entire floor was slanted because it was falling apart. Like if you would have dropped marbles and the floor was hard, they would have rolled down. The kitchen actually had a bathroom sink in it. And I'm almost confident that if an inspector came, he would have condemned it. And actually they tore it down this year, but it was cheap, baby. It was cheap. I don't want you to be unsafe, but I want you to stop pretending like you have more than you really do. Okay, I want to answer some questions here. If you don't know, you can send questions to ask@revo.church, and they come up to me here. Okay, many people have paid off the principal on their student loans multiple times, yet still owe large amounts due to high interest. Could the debt forgiveness principle in Deuteronomy 15 apply here? How should Christians respond to President Biden's student debt relief efforts, especially given that many conservative Christians are strongly opposed? I am not going to talk about politics. You can believe whatever you want politically, no matter how dumb it might be. But let me just address the first part of that question. What about debt relief programs? I believe many people in America get trapped in debt because they're waiting for the government to save them. The government ain't gonna save you. The government promises and rarely delivers. Can I get an amen on that at least? And so if you're basing your life on how much the government's gonna save you, you're in trouble already. Don't go to college believing that they're gonna pay off the debt for you. I have a really good friend who worked in an industry where they said, we'll pay off your college loan for you. And so instead of working really hard and making sure he didn't get college debt, he got all the college debt. And then he worked at this place for 4 years and he left a couple months early. And there was this little tiny small writing in the contract that if they left just early, you had to pay the entire thing back yourself. Don't just wait for someone else to pay it off. You got to live in reality. If you're taking the debt, it's your debt, it's nobody else's debt. That's the mentality you got to have about life. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself in trouble, all right? Stop pretending like you have more than you do. Stop pretending like someone else is going to save you. Is it biblical to accumulate wealth for personal gain? I actually would ask the question, I wish we had enough time. The Bible talks about how to accumulate wealth. So there's something that's okay about accumulating some wealth. But the question is, what are you going to do with the wealth that was accumulated? Are you going to become a hoarder or are you become a generous person? I didn't even get to this, but in the Millionaire's book, the people who earned their money tend to be extremely generous with the Lord and other people. So, like we talked about last week, it comes from the inside, right? The ability to give God what he is due, the ability to have self-control, that all comes from the inside. So if you're here just to accumulate wealth so you can have a Ferrari and make other people look stupid, you're already acting like a poor person. Wealthy people accumulate money so they can do good things with it. Some of them start businesses and provide jobs for other people. Some of them give it away to churches. Some of them make sure that their children and their grandchildren will never go hungry again. Wouldn't it be nice if you could pay for your grandchildren's college? Wouldn't that be cool? So we got to think of what we're going to do with it, and it's not just to accumulate for no good reason. Someone says HUD housing and Section 8 or low-income housing in general charges 1/3 of your income. So I said don't spend more than a fifth or 20% on housing. Yeah, you know what? This goes back to the same principle. If you're relying on the government to fix it for you, you're already in trouble, right? Right? Stop pretending to be rich. Stop waiting for someone else to save you. Yeah, HUD does charge you, or Section 8 charges you 1/3 of your income. And you know what else they do that really sucks? If you save up a few $1,000s, they kick you off. It actually puts you in a worse spot than you were before. Because, don't even get me started. You know what you really need to do, and people just don't want to hear it, is that you need to live in like a 3-bedroom house with 12 people who are all splitting the rent. But it's gonna be crazy. Your life's already crazy. Might as well admit it and stop pretending to be rich so you can split the cost, save money, and then live in a place you can actually afford later on. What do you do if you can barely afford for your family and barely make your bills and sometimes don't make all your bills? How do you give to the church if you have no money left? Here's how you give to God through the church when you're in that situation. You put God at the first line of your budget, not the last line of your budget. And I don't know how to explain it other than God is God, but when you do that, things start to work out. I just don't know how to explain it other than God is God. And he shows up. Now, I also think you're gonna have to change some things. You know, we have people you can meet with in the church who can help you look at your budget, because there might be ways to handle your budget differently. We have a class we do periodically here called Financial Peace University, so look for that when it comes around too. I have an uncle who is a millionaire. He drives a simple truck, buys jeans at Walmart, and doesn't live in a mansion. If you didn't know, you wouldn't be able to tell he's wealthy. That is exactly who we're talking about, isn't it? A lot of you might be able to think, well, you know, the guy who owns the company I work at, or the person I know, this millionaire that I know as a millionaire, he doesn't live like a millionaire. He's different than everybody else. No, he's exactly like every millionaire out there, because that's how you become millionaires. You don't become millionaires by buying everything, right? What are you doing? Rent is so high in Salina that it forces you to live above your means. If we did it the way you explain, our rent would have been $250 to $300, and there's nothing that cheap. Roommates. It's not fun, but it's what you have to do. And sometimes you have to live in a place that is what you would call below yourself. I'm sorry, but it's not below you. It's exactly what you can afford. Don't identify with the house you can afford with who you are as a human being. The house you live in is not equated to who you are as a human being. It's equated to what you can afford. There's a difference. Okay? You gotta live in a place that you can afford, not live in a place that is equal to who you are as a human being. Okay, that was the first Bible verse. These next ones are gonna go faster. Proverbs 20:20 says this. We did one, we have two more to go. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. Here's the difference. One stores up, one gulps. Let's write it down. Wise people store up what they have. Foolish people use what they have. Here, we're not even talking about rich versus poor. We're talking about wise versus foolish people. I'm going to show you that this is exactly what the book for millionaires talks about. Here are 5 common denominators from that book. Millionaires live well below their means. They don't gulp it down. If they make this much, they live on this much. They do not spend what they have. They allocate time, energy, and money efficiently in ways conducive to building wealth. I'm going to talk about what that is in just a little bit. They believe that financial independence is more important than displaying high social status. They don't wear clothes so that their friends think they look cool. They wear clothes that are cheap. Their parents did not provide economic outpatient care. You've been taught on social media that millionaires inherited their money. It's not true. The vast majority of millionaires earned it themselves without parental help. In fact, their adult children, the adult children of millionaires, are economically self-sufficient. What does this mean? Millionaires have children who don't need the millionaire's money. Why? Because their children grew up in homes where they learned self-control, spend less than you make, don't buy crazy things. And what does that produce? That produces children who grew up to be adults who can afford their life. Because they have self-control. They spend less than they make, right? Do you want your children to learn the way you're living now, or do you want your children to learn a different way? I want your children to learn the right way so that they grow up and have financial security. Basically, these millionaires didn't have huge head starts. They just spent less than they had. And they found a good way to invest it. What was the good way to invest it? 401ks. They invested at their work's retirement program. They did not make crazy investments. A lot of them did start their own companies eventually, which is true. But they were like a welder who said, you know what, I'm tired of welding for the man. I've saved up enough money, so I'm gonna start my own company. And then they start their own company welding, and then they make even more money. But what do? They live on the same amount. Now they're saving all of this. And then they hire some employees, so they're making even more, but they still live on the same amount. So now they're saving all this. Are you catching on here? So they do start some of their own companies, but here's the basic breakdown, okay? Broke Bobby, he gets a paycheck for $1,000, and how much of it does he spend? $1,000, or sometimes $1,200, right? You got Wretched Wade here. Wretched Wade makes $1,000, and how much does he spend? Yeah, $200, $500, right? Pretty soon, wretched Wade becomes wealthy Wade. Pretty soon, wealthy Wade becomes worth his weight in gold Wade. Isn't that nice? Oh, yeah. Whoa. Almost broke his neck. Wealthy Wade was about to be dead Wade, all right? One person who saw all this study about how millionaires live, they responded by saying this in the book. These people can't be millionaires. They don't look like millionaires. They don't dress like millionaires. They don't eat like millionaires. They don't act like millionaires. They don't even have millionaire names. Where are the millionaires who look like millionaires? Those people aren't millionaires. Those people are stressed out pretending to be rich. When you see someone driving down the road in a really nice car and they pull into a really home and they look really cool, they go inside and have heart attacks. And they sit down at their dinner table. How am I going to pay it? Oh, they're not millionaires. Those people aren't wealthy. They just have a lot of stuff. What needs to be below the surface in your mind? Two things. Let's write this down. To be able to save and increase my wealth, I need to have a desire for living in reality. Reality. It's not about what you want, about what you think you deserve. It's not about the type of house you wish you could be in. You got to live in reality. Number two, you got to have lots of self-control. They must be running constantly below the surface in my mind, those two things. Much more so than my desire to have stuff or look cool. We all want stuff. But the average millionaire, here's just some facts. The average millionaire, if they own a suit, it's not an expensive suit. You see on TV all the time, oh, this is a $5,000 Armani. Is Armani a suit? I don't know. $5,000 or whatever. No, rich people don't own those kind of suits. It's inexpensive. They rarely buy expensive watches. Do you know what type of watch the average millionaire buys? A Seiko from Walmart. They don't buy new cars. They typically buy used, American-made, good old cars. Nothing fancy. Here, I told you I was going to give you this stat earlier. 86% of people who own a nice car aren't millionaires. 86%. That means 15% of the people who have a nice car can actually afford it. Everybody else can't. You know what the most common car among millionaires is? A used Ford F-150. A used Ford F-150. Buy a piece of junk car and you'll be wealthier. How can a rich man be driving an F-150 around all the time when it's always in the shop? I love this question. Obviously, a Chevy person sent this in. Okay, but let's look at the reality. Let's look at the reality of the question. But I don't like to drive used cars because they break down and cost me just as much as a new car would. That's bullcrap. Do you know that? Say you're paying $500 a month for a brand new car. You buy a used car and it breaks down a couple times and costs you $2,000 every time it breaks down. It breaks down twice a year. You know you're still ahead? You're still ahead. Because how much does a $500 a month loan cost you? $6,000 every year. And then at the end of the truck, you paid like $37,000 instead of the $33,000 that it was worth when you bought it. And now it's only worth $20,000 because you've owned it for 5 years. You've lost money both in terms of net value and in terms of spending more than the actual cash. You buy a used Ford F-150 for $2,500. You put $2,000 into it to fix it. It's still worth $2,500, isn't it? You're actually saving money even by fixing an old car. So don't use the excuse, well, it's more expensive to fix a car. It's not true. All right, third Bible verse. Whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. Will you say this one with me? Whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. You don't have to be fanatical. You don't have to go home and be like, honey, we're living on $12 and 3 packs of ramen the rest of this month. Like, just save a little on your next paycheck, all right? You don't become rich by going, treasure, I won the lottery. You become rich by going, dollar, 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 dollar. That's how your treasure chest gets full. So how much should you save? One of the wisest people in the Bible, what was his name? Joseph. His name was Joseph. I forgot his name. One of the wisest people in the Bible, his name was Joseph. He got put into slavery into Egypt, and he got put in charge of Egypt. And this is what he said about saving. Let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth. What percentage is that? 20%. A fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They should collect all the food of those good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt. So he knew hard times were coming. Guess what? Hard times are coming for you too eventually, right? So his principle is the entire country should save 20%. And in doing so, he was able to save enough not just for Egypt, but for other regions around there too. So this isn't a rule in the Bible, but you can write this down. A good principle is to save around 20% of my income. This was Joseph's idea, and it actually works out pretty well. This is retirement. This is a savings account. As you practice it, it can be even more. Then you can start investing. I know what someone's saying right now. They're like, you're killing me, Jeff. You told me last week to give God 10%. Now you're telling me to save 20%. No one does that. Exactly. That's the whole point of the series, right? Like everyone is broke and stupid. Don't do what everyone else does. I want you to choose God and self-control above materialism and being broke. This means you should be living on 50 to 70% of your income, not 100%. Some of you need to sell the car that you've bought. Some of you need to move to a smaller home. Most of us need to eat out less. Most of us need to eat. I'm just going to check, see if there's any other questions, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Is wealth always money? In terms of what we're talking about today, yes. I mean, obviously, you can be wealthy spiritually, but what we're talking about today, we're talking about, how to get more cash. Listen, some of you need to change your lifestyle quite a bit. But what would it look like if you to put all 3 of these weeks into practice? I'm serious. Week 1, we said, my biggest money problem is that I think money's the problem. If I change the amount of stuff that I have and the amount of stuff that I want, then my worry, anxiety, and desires will change. Oh my gosh, the challenge was to get rid of a ton of stuff because you have 300,000 items and you don't need most of them. We consume twice as much as people did 50 years ago and our anxiety is higher. Jeez, consuming doesn't help you, it hurts you. So you will have self-control. You're going to have self-control and you're going to own less stuff. You're going to get rid of stuff. And because of that, you're going to have more joy. Will you say more joy? More joy. You're going to have more joy when you own less. And then week number 2, we said we're going to fully send it and worship God. Worshiping God with our hearts and minds always includes our money. Jesus said that if he cannot trust me with a little money, I won't be trustworthy with a lot because it comes from the heart. Whatever's inside of you comes to the outside. And the challenge was to give at least 10% of your income to God through the church. In fact, it is a 90-day challenge. There's cards in front of you and the chair in front of you in that little pocket that look like this. You had 3 options. You can say, I'm ready, I'm going to send it. I'm going to give 10% of my money to God. If you want to make that commitment today, you can still make it. You can put it in one of those red boxes on your way out. You can also say, I'm already doing it, but I'm going to still do it. And then you can say, I'm not ready yet, but I want to talk to someone about it. We got people who are willing to talk to you about it. So when you do this, God shows up and you have more than you need, which really frees you. And this gives you greater purpose in life. We all say more purpose, more purpose. So we've talked about more joy and more purpose. And then today, we've talked about stop pretending to be rich. Because if you stop pretending to be rich, whoops. I said what I mean, and I mean what I said. All right. Just kidding. I apologize. Great. They'd be like, so what was that money series about? It was about not. Right. That too, though, right? So stop pretending you're rich. Stop complaining. And when you do that, you'll have more money. Sheesh. But seriously, though, how would your life feel different if you had more joy, more purpose, and more money? It'd feel pretty good, wouldn't it? More joy, more purpose, and more money. Because if you get rid of all that stuff you got laying around, you're going to have more joy. If you give God 10%, you're going to have more purpose. And when you stop pretending to be rich, you're going to have more money. More joy, more purpose, more money. Let's pray. God, we want to follow you. We want to have our lives changed. And I pray in Jesus' name that you'll help us to put this into practice. You've given us the tools and the knowledge through your word. And we see that it lines up with what research says. And I mean, we knew already it was true, but now we need the self-discipline to live it out. God, help us. In the name of Jesus, amen. Have a great week. Don't complain.